21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
When I was 21 years old, I was homeless living in my recording studio. And it was at that point that I built my agency that I've now turned into a multiple seven-figure business. I did it all by myself the first few years. I was able to take a really low point in my life and turn that into a really successful business. Hi, my name is Brennan Haelig. I'm the owner of Jumpstart ROI. We're a digital marketing agency. Back in 2018, I was homeless, sleeping in my recording studio at the time. I had a music business that sort of fell apart, and I ended up giving up my lease, and I was sleeping in this 10-foot by 10-foot recording studio for about 8 months of my life. And at the time, I was broke. I had credit card debt. I remember having 50 cents in my bank account basically at the time, and I would take my suitcase from there to my day job. I still had a day job at the time, but I would take my suitcase there. I would shower in the building that I worked at, and I would kind of hide my suitcase from all of my coworkers because I didn't want them to know. And then at night, I would walk back and sleep in that recording studio. And at that point was when I, knew I needed to figure out a new, business. Ultimately, I knew I didn't want to go and get, a full-time corporate job. I didn't want to go work for a company that I didn't care about, and I was lost. I didn't know what to do. I ended up looking for YouTube videos on, how to make money online. And I found a lot of people talking about Facebook ads and Google ads and being able to, create digital marketing campaigns for local businesses. And at the time, I had a little bit of experience doing that with my first business, which I can talk more about. But I had a music business that sort of ended up falling apart. But I had these skills, and I knew that if I could just take this skill set and find businesses that, would believe in me and give me a chance, that I could start to get some case studies, I could start to get some clients, and then maybe turn that into something bigger. And so that was 2018 going into 2019. And fast forward now about 6 years later, I've turned that into a business. We do multiple seven figures per year. I have 18 fantastic people on my team, and we've grown the company a lot since then. And so that was kind of my rags to riches story. Throughout building the business that I have now, there's been a lot of different phases, and there's been many of those phases. At every phase, I felt moments of doubt, and I felt, even sometimes at our highest peak, in terms of, our highest revenue months or most profitable months, I still sometimes feel like I've failed, and I fail all the time. I can think even in the last month, multiple times where, I feel like I've failed, whether it's we lost a client, or I should have done something better to help keep that client, or, I could have motivated our team better, been a better leader. And that's something that I've struggled with a lot in the last almost 7 years now that I've had this business, where at every stage, there's always that doubt kind of creeping in. Part of being an entrepreneur is you just have to have this sort of manufactured self-confidence, and you just kind of have to either have it or you don't, because a lot of times there's not that self-confidence doesn't always even come from anywhere, because there were times where I didn't have any reason to be confident, but I still had to just be confident anyways, right? To make other people believe that they should, that I could do what I'm telling them that I can do, especially when you're talking about selling services to people, right? At the end of the day, they have to believe that I'm going to be able to give them the service that they're paying for, and that it's worth whatever they're paying. And so that's been something that I still struggle with. Every phase of the business, there's been moments of doubt. I think especially about 2.5 years into the business, I hit this crossroads where at the time I was still working a day job part-time. And so my business was getting to a point where my income from the business was a little bit higher than what I was making from the day job, but I was also still paying off student loans and credit card debt. And I didn't want to completely jump away from my, day job at the time. And it turns out the decision was kind of made for me. I actually got let go from my day job at the time, which forced me to go all in on the business. And that was really scary for me, because all I wanted up to that point was just to be a full-time entrepreneur. I just wanted to be self-employed full-time. That was kind of my goal. I wasn't thinking about making, millions of dollars or anything crazy like that. I just wanted to support myself on my own and just have the satisfaction of knowing that I did it. And so at the time, that was really tough because for the first couple of weeks, I was scared. I was like, all right, I don't have this day job anymore. Fortunately, my business was at a point where I could support myself from it, but I was pretty terrified if this was going to work out long term. It was at this point me with like 2 virtual assistants basically that I had, in the Philippines that I had hired at the time. Both of them still work for me actually, which I'm really proud of. But what ended up happening was the next 2-3 months, we hit our biggest, highest revenue months ever. And because I had sort of my back against the wall, I had to go all in on the business. And I don't know if I would have achieved that if I was still working at my day job. I probably would have stayed there another 6 months, even another year. And so I actually wouldn't have grown the business as fast as I wanted to. And so it ended up actually being a good thing, getting let go from the day job at that time, although it felt like a really scary place to be. When I look back on it now, I say, wow, that was exactly what I needed at the time to end up reaching new levels of success with the business. That same idea has been repeating over the years as we've scaled and got new team members. There's been multiple times where maybe I have to double down and invest in something, even if maybe our revenue is we had a month where it trended downwards. It's scary to spend thousands of dollars maybe investing in hiring somebody new or investing in marketing or something like that. But every time that I've done that, when I look back at it 3 months, 6 months later, I'm really glad that I did, because often it propels me to new heights in the company. And so, that is just what entrepreneurs have to deal with, I think, when they're going through the motions, especially in the first few years. Another thing that's been on my mind recently, even at the level that we're at now, is this identity shift from being the freelancer to the owner operator to ultimately just the owner, where the concept that people you hear from every entrepreneur podcast and every course and every guru online, they talk about do you have a high paying job? Have you created a job for yourself, or do you actually have a business that you own that works for you? And I think the reality is there's a lot of middle ground between there, and it doesn't happen overnight, especially when you're first starting out. And I think this is especially relevant for service businesses, because when you're first starting out in a service business, most often it's you, the individual person, doing the work and selling the service to whoever you're selling to. And oftentimes people start service businesses because it doesn't require a lot of cash up front. And as you grow, once maybe you exit a business, well, now you can just buy an existing business, and that's kind of a different ballgame. But I think for most entrepreneurs, especially people early in their career, the first business they start, they are the thing that they're selling, basically, is them. Or maybe you're developing a SaaS or something like that, but you as the owner are probably doing all the sales, you're doing a lot of the operational work, and then as you start to get some more revenue, now you can start to hire people. But nobody just knows how to hire people when they first start a business. They don't, they can teach you that or whatever in business school, but if you don't have any money, you have to do everything yourself. You can listen to all these, gurus and people selling their courses talking about, you need to create a business that works without you, which is ultimately a good concept to shoot for. But they don't talk about how do you actually get through the middle ground between freelancer and owning a business that runs without you. It's a very muddy middle ground that you have to go through, and it can be very difficult, and it could take a long time. I am just now at the point where I do the sales, but I'm not really involved anymore in much of the client fulfillment. I still am for some of our older clients that have been with us 2, 3, 4 years. But for all the new clients now that come on, I have a great team who handles all the onboarding and all the fulfillment after that point, which is great. But I just recently in the last year kind of fully hired out the right people to build that out. Even to the point where we were making, over $1 million in revenue. Well, I was still doing a lot of the client communication myself after they would onboard. And even now I'm still doing all of the sales. And so the next level for me will be, hopefully a year from now, I'm going to be able to bring on a sales rep to train them. And then at that point, I'll be completely removed from the customer lifecycle of, on selling to being on, like being sold, then being onboarded, and then being taken care of on the fulfillment end, and ultimately retaining their business, hopefully for the long term. But it's taken me a long time. Now going into another business, if I started at a second company, my mindset's a lot different. But I couldn't have had this mindset if I wasn't at the place where I'm at now. Like if I start another business, let's say I sell this company, it's gonna be so much easier for me to build a business where I'm not even involved in the client fulfillment at all from day one. But I couldn't have built this business without doing all the work myself leading up to it, because now when I hire people, I know exactly what they should be doing. I know what everything entails. I know the technical aspect of the business, and I know how to communicate with clients. So I can, have high expectations for people because I used to do it myself. I'm actually glad that I didn't delegate too much too early, because people will always talk about delegation, and it's a skill in and of itself, and I'm still learning it. I tend to be the type of person that maybe can micromanage sometimes too much, because I like to make sure that things are done right, and I really care about our clients and want to make sure that our team is taking care of them. But you also need to learn to let go, and so that's something I have a consultant that I work with. He's basically my business therapist, and I talk to him every couple of weeks. He's kind of like my Jedi Master Yoda for me in my business, where he kind of is much older and wiser than me. And one of the things he regularly talks about is knowing when to drop the ball. And what he means is, you have to drop the ball and you have to let the team pick it up. Because if you don't drop the ball, they'll never learn how to run with the ball. And so you as the owner have to sometimes just drop the ball, and it's scary, and they're gonna mess up, and they're gonna say the wrong thing to clients. Clients might leave, the team members might leave, like people are gonna get mad, and that's okay. But you have to do it. You have to go through those difficult things to figure out how to delegate and what's broken and what processes to build. And it's still something that I am still going through, but that's the kind of difficult in between going from freelancer to, owning a business that totally runs without you. Another thing that's been a huge unlock for me is realizing that lead gen and deal flow pretty much solves all of the problems that I've had in each stage of this business. And one of the things that took us, really the main thing that took us from doing, $20K a month to $100K a month was simply figuring out how to consistently get more sales calls on the calendar. Now, this is something that we've implemented for ourselves, and this is also what we help our clients do. So when clients hire us, we help them generate more leads and ultimately more customers and make more money. But for operationally for us, all the problems that you have when you're in that 10 to 20K a month range, a lot of those are basically anxiety about just not having enough clients, because you're pretty worried, even at that amount of revenue, which is, in business, that's not all that much. But for an agency, for example, at that point, you're figuring out how to hire your first couple team members, and you're figuring out how to keep clients for the long term. And every time you lose a client, you notice it. If you have, clients that are paying you a couple $1,000s a month and you lose that client, you notice that affects, your personal income. It affects your profit at the end of the day. But the thing that solves that is not usually some, course or, some magic, solution. It's just figuring out how to get more leads. And that is really tough, because a lot of agencies at that level are just relying on referrals, and they're just relying on people locally, maybe in your area. Maybe you're going to local networking events, and that can be great, but it's not scalable. You can only spend so much time going to local networking events, or you only get so many referrals because you only know so many people. And so the biggest unlock for us was figuring out how do we get more leads. And what we did it for us was Upwork, and that was a channel that we've invested a lot in. It's a freelancer marketplace with agencies and freelancers, but basically it allows us to connect with businesses that are actively looking to hire an agency like us for Facebook ads management, Google ads management, landing page design, whatever it might be. And so that allowed me to start all of a sudden getting 20 leads a month, 30 leads a month, 40 leads a month, and nowadays we get about 100 leads a month just from that channel. And it took me years to build it up, but that's been a huge unlock for us. And that is really a key part of what took us from 20K a month to over 100K a month and now to 200K a month is just having a consistent flow of leads, because it allows you to test different pricing. It allows you to test different ways of selling. It allows you to test different ways of fulfilling services. And sometimes that's tough because you might have certain, clients that are going to say no because you charge them too much, or, you try a different way of fulfilling the service and it doesn't work out. But it allows you to figure out what works, because you aren't as afraid of losing every client, because you know that you have more leads coming in. You can always get more clients. And so if you can solve the how to get clients problem, everything else in the business gets easier. It also helps you make more money, which means you can hire better people. And so along with the lead gen problem, then there's the hiring problem. And that at a certain point, that's how you get from, 50 to 100K a month to 300K a month, 400K a month, is hiring the right team, because now we have more leads. We just need even better team members to keep clients longer. And so it's kind of that, two-edged sword of lead flow on one side and then fulfillment on the other side. Now, this is specific to a service business, but it's really relevant for almost any company, where you have to keep sales coming in, because that's the lifeblood of the business. You have to have sales coming in, obviously, because that's cash flow. And then what do you do with the cash flow? You invest it in processes and people. And the better processes and the better people that you have, and technology, if you can increase and upgrade all of those things, then you can go and get more sales. And so it's like having the right timing to do, like, when do you hire the right person? That's different for every business, but figuring that out for our company has been a huge unlock. And that's really what's taken us to the next level, is figuring out how to get more leads, and then figuring out how do we hire the right people. For anyone out there listening who's looking for help getting more leads, not only we've done this for ourselves, but this is exactly what we do for our clients. So what we do is we help them create funnels, primarily using paid advertising, to drive more leads, more sales calls, ultimately more clients and customers into their business, and help them turn $1 of investment into $3 of return on investment. And so we primarily specialize in Meta ads, Google ads, and LinkedIn ads. We help our clients do exactly this. Another aspect to what we do that a lot of our clients struggle with is tracking the metrics in their business that have the most impact. So a lot of clients come to us and they've either been running some ads on their own, maybe they've worked with another agency or another vendor, and they just weren't really sure if it was actually working. And oftentimes they just aren't tracking the things that actually matter. When it comes to advertising, we don't care about vanity metrics like clicks and impressions and things like that. Ultimately, we care about deals closed, new clients, and return on investment. And that can be pretty tricky, especially for service businesses. You have a bunch of different software tools. You've got, your CRM tool, you've got maybe an email list, and it's hard to tell, once the deal closes, where did that person find out about you from? What funnel did they come through? How much did it cost you to acquire that customer? And a lot of businesses, I find, just aren't even tracking this at all. And you might say, all right, I'm not running paid ads. It doesn't cost me anything to acquire customers. Well, it still does, because you're either spending your time or you're spending some amount of money somewhere. You're paying staff, you're paying for software, all of that stuff is a cost. And so even if it's just looking at your total costs and then how many customers do you have, you can do some simple math to figure out on a monthly basis, what is it costing you to bring new customers into the business? And that can be both time and money. And so that's kind of step one, is figuring out, all right, what is a customer actually worth to us for one. Are you selling $1,000 thing? Are you selling a recurring thing? Are you selling a $50 product? And that is going to determine what can you pay to go and acquire customers. And what a lot of businesses do is they first off just don't track that, but they underestimate what they can actually afford to spend. They either under or overestimate what they can afford to spend to acquire a customer. And so, anyone out there who's listened to like Alex Hormozi's stuff, he talks about this all the time. And so there's a really great model that he put together for, basically, a long story short, what you make within 1 month of that, having that customer, should be more than double what you pay to acquire them. And if that's the case, then that first month, you're always making more than twice what you spent to acquire that customer. You can basically go and spend unlimited dollars on acquiring more customers. And if you can get that formula right, you really unlock a lot of growth in your business. Now, for a lot of service businesses, they might have a recurring revenue model or some kind of long-term package or something like that they're selling to clients. And you have to figure out what is your actual operating margin on that. And so having some kind of internal dashboard where you can track how much revenue is coming in, how much you're spending on labor costs, how much you're spending on software costs is a great first step, just to understand how much profit you actually have. What is your actual margin before taxes? And then you want to factor in, all right, what is our marketing cost? And what should our marketing cost be? A lot of people will say, I'll spend 5% of revenue on marketing. Well, the reality is a lot of our clients, depending on what type of business they are, they're maybe spending 10, 20, even 30% of revenue on marketing. Oftentimes, these might be e-commerce brands that spend a lot more on marketing, but that number should be unique to your business based on what your customers are worth. So can you afford to pay $200 per appointment? Can you afford to pay $400 per appointment? Most of the clients, maybe when they first start with us, they don't really know. They have an idea in their head, but they don't really know. And everyone always asks me, how much should I spend on ads? And I always say, I answer it with a question, which is, how many clients do you want? And what is your goal? Because that number is different for everybody. And so a lot of clients come on, they say, oh, I only want to spend $1,000 a month. Oh, I want to spend $2,000 a month. And I say, well, how many clients do you want? And they say, 50 or 100. They give me some high number. And I go, well, all right. And I do the math. And I say, all right, based on similar campaigns that we've run, this is what it's probably going to cost you to get an appointment. This is how many appointments you need. This is how many leads you need. And usually that it works backwards to a number that's way higher than what they actually thought. And that's just the reality. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but oftentimes there's this disconnect between what I want and the goal, and then what I expect to spend to get there. And a lot of times it's more expensive than they think. And for some clients, they have to go rethink their whole business model because they're not charging enough. If you're only charging maybe $500, a month or something, like, you might not have very much room in there to actually pay to acquire customers when you start actually investing in marketing. So that tracking what really matters is really key. And this applies to really any business, but I think in services, it's especially difficult because there's a lot of different variable costs, whether it's software or labor. And also there's a lot of different tools to track all of this stuff. You have your calendar booking platform, you have your QuickBooks, you have your CRM tool and all of that. And getting all those tools to talk to each other can be really difficult. So what I always recommend to people is try to look for tools that integrate, like have API integrations or Zapier integrations, because we can get them all to talk to each other. And ideally, you want to have a centralized dashboard where you can see all of your leads for the month. You can see what it's costing you to get those leads. You can see how many of those leads have moved through every stage of your pipeline. And then you can calculate a cost per customer. And so that is really the gold standard that we want a lot of our clients to shoot for. That's what we help them build, is systems where they can actually track all of this from customer acquisition all the way through fulfillment in their business. If you're listening out there and you're a business, maybe you're struggling with deal flow, you're struggling to scale because you don't have enough leads coming in, paid ads could be a really good fit for you. And for anyone out there, if they do want to reach us, we're at jumpstartroi.com. Anyone can hit me up anytime. I'm always generous with my time. I'm happy to get on a call with anybody out there. And if nothing else, just give you some free value and see if we might be a fit to help you out. Really, clients that would be a perfect fit for us are going to be people that are doing probably at least like 50 to 100K a month in revenue, and maybe all the way up to 10 million. Any of the businesses kind of in that, they found product market fit. They're already generating some amount of revenue. They're not huge Fortune 500 companies. Maybe they're mid-market, but businesses all along that revenue range will struggle with deal flow. So those are really perfect clients for us. Generally looking for people that have already kind of gone from 0 to 1. You've got a proven offer. You're generating some revenue. Maybe you're getting most of your business from referrals or people in your local network or just through your organic audience. But you are looking for a way to scale and take yourself from 50 to 100K a month to 300K a month, 400K a month, 500K a month. Those are going to be great clients for us. We really specialize particularly in professional services, B2B services, tech companies, anything that might fall into that, even local service businesses as well. That's going to be a great fit for us, and we're going to be able to help you get some more deal flow coming into your pipeline.
21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Imagine a space where triumphs, trials, and tales of entrepreneurship come alive. Welcome to the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Podcast, a gold awarded journey hosted by Martin Piskarik, connecting with listeners in 95 countries and ranking in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. Join our exclusive community, elevate your perspective, and embark on the path to success.